down the line positions that they could still like go back to this free agent market for. I think the interior of the offensive line, just because of the concern, like, okay, you've got the group that you're kind of running it back with: Yelda, Paris Johnson Jr., Isaiah Adams, Evan Brown, Jonah Williams, Calvin Beachum, some sort of variation of that. Like, that doesn't exactly, like, that's basically it. And then you got a bunch of kind of like backup level guys at best. And I think the wide receiver thing too, because it's not a big time playmaker draft either.
With the NFL draft just a month away, will the Arizona Cardinals opt to dip their toe back in to the available free agent pool? I'm Johnny Venerable. He's Bo Brack. PHNX Cardinals, some bird droppings, Bo. The Cardinals, they still need help. Cornerback, maybe the offensive line. Do they go back into free agency, or do they wait for the NFL draft?
Yeah, watch where you step. I think that they could kick the tires, kind of sniff around some of this free agent market, but it's just too volatile, it seems like, at this point. As far as who's left over, who they would view as having value, somebody that could kind of push for a roster spot, push for an active role on this team. Now you're really kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. Do you revisit an Asante Samuel Jr. or that defensive back conversation? But are those guys going to want to wait until after the draft so they don't kind of get supplanted by some of these incoming rookies? So it is kind of a tough, it's a little bit of a tightrope walk for Monty Ossenfort and the rest of the organizations out there on which free agents are available, but certainly some intriguing names left on the market.
Yeah, if you're wondering who's available, a lot of ex-Cardinals, specifically guys, PFF has their best culmination of like 11-11 on both sides of the ball. Will Hernandez, best available guard, according to PFF. He and Brandon Sheriff, who may or may not be retiring. Yeah. And then on the flip side, Dennis Gardeck coming off major injury. He'll eventually get a contract from somebody. Calais Campbell, of course, coming off a really good year for Miami, but he's approaching 40 years old. And then, of course, Kyzir White, who, again, like solid starter for the Cardinals, and Gannon and Ossenfort. Would they opt to bring him back? I think a lot of us would approve of that, given the uncertainty around the kid they brought over from Cincinnati, Davis Gaither. But Cardinals really feel like they have no appetite. Like, somebody on our show DM'd you, Bo, a screenshot between he and Kyzir White. Cardinals didn't even offer Kyzir White a contract. And so, yeah, these guys are going to be making close to the vet minimum. But, like, I look at some of these free agent corners, and it's like, I would kick the tires on Rasul Douglas. I would kick the tires, health permitting, on Asante Samuel Jr. But, I mean, first weekend in April, you're unsigned. There's probably a reason.
Yeah, I think that what Ossenfort is trying to figure out is if those guys like Samuel Jr., obviously the qualifier, if healthy, or Rasul Douglas, are they definitively better than what they already have? And trying to figure that out, like, you want them to be an upgrade, a veteran presence, but also not somebody that's going to block guys like Elijah Jones, or a guy that's ahead of Elijah Jones, Max Melton, from developing and hopefully becoming, your starting cornerback and really kind of playing significant snaps for you. So that's the kind of tough thing with the defensive back, where they didn't have that definitive upgrade. It was already kind of picked clean off the free agent market during the first and second wave. Yeah, it really is tough. The thing I'll say about Kyzir White, we're the kids here, and we want the parents to get back together, and it's just not happening. They got divorced. It's I think that it was better to love and lose Kyzir White than not love at all, I guess.
Wow.
Right? Wow. Have those. We'll always remember those 2 years. Like, he was a guy that kind of ushered in the JG era. He was the guy that he kind of set the tone and was part of the culture change, and we appreciate that. We tip the cap to him, and we'll always remember that. Everybody, describes him as a dog. He's a guy that is well respected by his coaching staff and his teammates alike, but Cardinals wanted to get younger and maybe more athletic at the position, and that's what they're doing. I think you just need to accept that Akeem Davis Gaither is going to be your Mike linebacker that probably wears the green dot. And you don't want to disrespect Kyzir White by offering him, like, hey, you could come back on a depth role. I don't think they want to do that to him. And he's one of those, cases where I think he could go find a fringe to starting role out there on if his market materializes here, before the draft or after the draft. I think that with Kyzir White, there's that, and then there's Will Hernandez, who I think, the biggest waiting game with him is not for the Cardinals, but just for him to get completely healthy, have that box checked, and then he'll probably get a starting job somewhere. And I don't think it's with the Cardinals. I mean, they've got Isaiah Adams and Evan Brown, pretty much penciled in there. And I don't think they're going to be like they probably have the door open, but it's like, hey, you can come in and compete, but you got to be able to overtake one of these guys for the left or right guard spot.
Mike Garafolo told us on our show, it's unfortunate, it will not gone down with an injury. He'd probably be re-signed again, probably sign his third contract with this franchise. The minute you re-sign Evan Brown to the 1-year deal, I mean, that's the money that would have been allocated to Will Hernandez, and they opted to go a different direction. They could always add a draft pick at guard, within the first 3 rounds. I look at this receiver market, and again, Cardinals kind of showed their hand, tendering Greg Dortch, re-signing Zay Jones, Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, all without jobs, right? All would come with minimal costs, right? Nobody's getting stupid to Stephon Diggs money like we just saw with New England. Like, Keenan Allen last year, I know people are critical, 744 yards, 7 touchdowns, right? Like, I don't hate that. Deontay Johnson, not as productive. Amari Cooper, who has familiarity with Drew Petzing, just under 600 yards, 4 touchdowns. Same with Elijah Moore, both out of Cleveland. So, again, like, I don't anticipate a move at receiver. That's a really, really disheartening, market for these guys, because I'm sure it's like, see what we get in the draft. Let's see if we can get a guy in the middle to late rounds that could come in and help us. Otherwise, we'll give you a phone call or May and June if we need some guys to catch passes. But the Cardinals they're so run heavy. They've got 6 tight ends signed to their roster right now, including one of the best in the NFL, and Trey McBride. Like, if you told me Keenan Allen signed tomorrow, I think that'd be great. Great for optics, great for this show. How much of an impact? He's not having 744 yards in this offense.
No, he would have to take a way backseat role. I mean, even probably behind Zay Jones at this point in his career. I mean, it would be one of the sadder training camp battles I think we've seen between, a pair of vet receivers that, their best days are behind them. But I think Zay would probably have the edge with experience in this, and like where the Cardinals, they need help. I think when you talk about Amari Cooper and you talk about Elijah Moore, those are guys that seem you could carve something out for them. Like Moore could see snaps in the slot in place of, obviously it would take away from Dortch, but you could see him maybe emerging as a former 2nd round pick. And then Cooper, as you mentioned, with the experience in this offense, could he be an upgrade over the 3-position receiver that Zay Jones is? I think he's capable of doing it, even though he's got a couple more years on him. So, yeah, there's nothing that like it's going to be universally beloved. Like, people aren't going to look at this maybe outside of like a Kendall Fuller signing at the cornerback position. There, people are going to be like, oh, hey, that's an impact move. It's just like, hey, we'll wait and see. Like, they're kicking the tires on this guy. Like, do you view anybody out on as far as the top available free agents is somebody that you can see that makes an impact for the Cardinals in 2025?
I mean, one of the corners, because we know that this team is going to sign a veteran corner, unless you get Jones and for Will Johnson at pick 16. They need corner help. That they're not going to start Sean Murphy-Bunting. They need more at that position. Maybe they're going to sign somebody. They have to. And whether it comes this weekend, in a month from now, 2 months from now, like, that's a position where that market hasn't materialized at all this offseason. You've got ample time, kind of have your cake and eat it too. My only concern is just do not, in a defensive line rich draft, say, well, we need a corner, let's just take Will Johnson. I like Will Johnson. But again, I like Shamar Stewart and James Pierce Jr. and Walter Nolan, et cetera, more than a guy who doesn't impact the line of scrimmage. So that's the position. I think everything else, it's like Keenan Allen's fun, no impact, right? Will Hernandez comes back. He's a backup right now. Calais Campbell, I'd be jonesing for that. Let's say they don't add a defensive tackle in the draft. If Calais Campbell wanted to come play here one more time, that'd be awesome. But yeah, I mean, you got your impact with Sweat and Dalvin Tomlinson, and then again, re-signing a lot of your own. I mean, we don't talk about this enough because it happened forever ago. I think a lot of us thought this was going to be the offseason. We said goodbye to Budda Baker and maybe James Conner. And that didn't happen. Like that, we didn't even get to tease that this offseason. That was put to bed before the end of the regular season. Buda Baker and James Conner had new deals before Christmas. So I'm not saying like free agency lost a little cachet, but like those were guys like Trey Benson ready to take over. Oh my goodness, is Taylor Demerson going to start alongside Jalen Thompson? Nope, actually, we're going to take care of two of our best players. So it's been pretty uneventful as a result.
Yeah. I mean, there's the positions that you feel like the team's going to be super aggressive in the draft, and it's the one that's, the strength of this draft. It's the defensive front seven. It's interior defensive line. It's edge rusher, right? So I would be shocked if they're sitting here post draft saying, "Hey, we got to give old Calais a call." I mean, I would, with as many guys as that are available that are 21, 22, 23 years old, and you're going to go and you're going to be calling Calais Campbell at 38 years old. I would be really surprised by that. So like when I look at like really legitimate down the line positions that they could still like go back to this free agent market for, I think the interior of the offensive line, just because of the concern, like, okay, you've got the group that you're kind of running it back with Yelda, Paris Johnson Jr., Isaiah Adams, Evan Brown, Jonah Williams, Calvin Beachum, some sort of variation of that. Like, that doesn't exactly, like, that's basically it. And then you got a bunch of kind of like backup level guys at best. So like, could you kind of tap back into the offensive line post draft if the dominoes don't fall your way, right? There's not, the depth in the draft enough to where you could confidently say that's going to be picked up. And I think the wide receiver thing too, because it's not a big time playmaker draft either.
No, it's a meat and potatoes draft. There are guys that can help the Cardinals. It doesn't feel like anything is imminent. We are locked into the draft, but if anything should break here on PHNX Cardinals, like, subscribe, leave us a 5-star wherever you get your podcast. So much good stuff coming out of PHNX Cardinals. We'll talk to you on the next one.